Welcome, students, to another video lecture with Mr. Connect. We're moving into a new chapter here. We're moving into chapter 2, where we're going to learn some integer rules and how they will actually apply to all real numbers eventually. So go ahead and pause here and copy down what you see. That includes the left and the right screen. Okay, welcome back. So, very first lesson of chapter 2, what we're learning about is how do we use absolute value and how do we actually compare numbers. So, our lesson title is Integers and Absolute Value. So, in this first problem we have, ordering numbers on a number line, our first guided example, and I really do not like how I wrote that, so I'm going to start to fix this as I go. We needed to make sure that guided looked like it was noticeable, and I should probably add some colons afterwards. Okay, so go ahead and start circling what we care about in this problem before we start. Awesome. So what we're going to be circling here is likely the scores that our students have got, and there's this big sequence of them. And then, I like to bracket the focus of a problem. So we need to order the scores from least to greatest on a number line. So our number line, we should try and keep it nice and straight. And then we should also try and be relatively equal when we use it. And remember, just like graphing, the way we can keep this straight, the way we can keep this slightly equal is likely using a ruler when we perform it. I am going to model that it does not always have to be a ruler, but your goal is to create equal spacing. Okay, so now before I put any numbers on my number line, I have students that always just jump ahead and start always using a similar sequence of numbers. I'm going to make sure I can fit. I'm going to need a number no smaller than -5 and no larger than 4, it seems. All right, so based on that, I'm going to start with -6 in my sequence here. So -6, -5, -4, -3, and I am trying to label these numbers on the number line itself. Okay, now we need to start placing these numbers from least to greatest. And a lot of what students like to do is they actually start ordering these from least to greatest, but I'm actually going to place them on the number line like we're supposed to, which means by placing them on the number line, and notice that dot went on the line, not above the line, not up here. It needs to be on the actual line. By putting them on the line, you're actually getting them from least to greatest. 0. -1. And as we're doing this, you do want to keep this reflective question I have on the left side here in mind. What side of the number line are larger numbers always located? It's a side. You have two choices, left or right. Okay, so by putting them on the number line, just to make sure I did it right, I'm also going to write out my sequence again. Yep, we did it from least to greatest on a number line. Not too challenging, huh? Great job, students. Let's keep on moving on in our lesson. And I'm about to show you 2 slides ahead. That means that when there is space after problems, please leave space on your paper to perform these problems. So jumping ahead here, notice we're going to draw a squiggly line from ordering numbers on a number line. That was a primary skill I have to teach in 7th grade. We don't use it a lot, but I still had to teach it. So we're jumping ahead here now to absolute value. And again, it's really vital that anytime you see space, leave space. So go ahead and pause here and copy down what you see. Okay, welcome back. So as we are moving forward in this lesson, let's also keep in mind this reflection question I'd like us to think of. What step in the order of operations is absolute value? So we actually have learned this. If you don't remember, this is a great studying opportunity. Go back to that 1.213 note and check what is an absolute value symbol and where would we place it in the order of operations. We've discussed that. So first thing, it's really vital that when we talk about absolute value, you're fully aware it's a distance. A number is from 0. And in the world, distance is always a positive number. The way I like to relate this is if I asked you how far it was from your home to the middle school, you may give some answer like 4 miles. If I asked you how far it is from the middle school back to your house, the distance doesn't change to a negative number. You still state 4 miles. So distance is always a positive number. That's important to realize. Now, in this lesson, when we do end up with negative answers in our absolute value, you want to pay attention, like example 3 here, on where the negative's located in relationship to the absolute value symbols. Is it inside the absolute value symbols, or is it outside the absolute value symbols? So let's go start through number 1. How far? What is the absolute value of negative 13? How far is negative 13 from 0? If you said 13, you are correct. I know I'm going to violate me boxing my step there, but I don't have much space, so I'm going to do that today. Okay, so what is the absolute value of 6? If you said negative 6, you're that student who's comparing opposites with absolute value, and they have no connection whatsoever. Absolute value is how far you are from 0, so the absolute value of 6 is 6. Okay, number 3 is starred, because I've shown this before. This negative, notice it's on the outside of the absolute value symbols. So I'm going to show this doing it one step at a time, following the order of operations, just like from our 1, 2, 1, 3 note. Technically, that negative is a negative 1 multiplying the absolute value of 4. I know my 1 looks like the absolute value, so I got to fix that. There we go. Okay. So this is order of operations. What's the first step in the order of operations? Yeah, you're right. It's grouping symbols. So the absolute value of 4 is 4. Now we have to bring the negative 1 down because that's still multiplication. Now we have to do the multiplying and dividing, and that's why we end up with negative 4. So the answer to this problem is negative 4 because the grouping symbol and the negative were not included together. The negative was on the outside of the grouping symbol. So let's start going with example 4 here. And this is a substitution problem. So before I substitute, I always write my problem down. And then I'm going to write my problem down exactly as it is with grouping symbols where the variable would have gone. Notice I'm modeling the grouping symbol strategy still. And then we stick the number negative 2 in there for x. And now, again, this is an order of operation problem. There's nothing to do inside those grouping symbols around the negative 2. So we move out to the other grouping symbols. We're working from the inside to the outside. So now we have the absolute value of negative 2 is 2. Everything else comes straight down. Now we're doing 7 take away 2, and 7 take away 2 is the number 5. So our answer to this problem is 5. So now moving on to example 5. And I'm actually going to slide ahead. So you're going to start seeing example 6, but you don't have to copy it just yet. So again, this is just a little bit more complex than example 4. And complex meaning it's longer, trying to make it harder for you. But if you're following that procedure of always writing down your variables with empty grouping symbols, it shouldn't be too challenging. So we're going to write the same thing down, grouping symbols instead of letters. And then we're going to stick those numbers in. So x equals 2, so I'm going to place that where the x is. Y equaled negative 4, so we stick it in there. And z equaled 3. And notice I purposely did not put these in x, y, z order, so you have to pay attention. Again, this is the order of operations. So I'd love it if you paused here, tried this problem, and then followed through. So we're going to pause here. I'm going to say on the left side is your first attempt, and then I'm going to give you a second to solve that, and then I'll show you the answer on the other side here. Awesome, welcome back. So you should have your attempt over on the left side here, and I'll show you the model here going one step at a time after the substitution. So we have stuff to do inside this left grouping symbol. We have some multiplication to do, and it does allow us to do all the multiplication at once. I should probably keep this color coded a little bit. Man, that erase circle is really large. I got to edit that. Okay, so we're going to put these absolute values in. What's 4 times negative 4? Yeah, it's negative 16. And negative 16 times 3? Yeah, I got negative 48. Then everything else comes straight down. Okay. We have on the right side, we have more grouping symbols to do. Oh, wait, I still have to finish my left side grouping symbols. So the absolute value of negative 48 is 48. Still bringing everything straight down. We have nothing inside the grouping symbols next to the 2, so now we're moving out to the absolute values around the 2, and the absolute value of 2 is 2. So what we can do is actually just change those, showing we've applied the absolute value symbols. We've changed them into parentheses now. 3 times 2, well, that's our 6, and our answer is 42. How'd you do? Did you get the same answer as me? Nicely done. I'm going to leave example 6 for in class because this is a great model to show the difference of how the grouping symbols and absolute values placed in the problem can change the answers. So make sure you have example 6 copied down. Place questions you may have in these question columns. Remember, these do help guide us in the class and make our learning deeper. And it also helps explain any confusion you may have. So great job, students. I can't wait to see you again soon. Write down any questions you may have.